Hi all, this is Jenny Milkey. Bilingualism and creativity is a topic that interests me strongly because from 6th grade to 12th grade, I attended an international school where everybody completed the IB program. There weren't any other options. So while this quote, being able to communicate in another language is like having a key that unlocks the doors of another culture, perspective, and way of feeling, seems fairly surface level. One of the main takeaways from this week's article from the Journal of Creative Behavior is that there really hasn't been a significant amount of research looking at bilingualism and creativity, or bilingualism and giftedness. It's not so much that there's questions about the benefits of bilingualism as shown in this poster. It's just that even while the article was published in 2018, the researchers' literature review found only a handful of relatively small studies that even began to correlate bilingualism with creativity or divergent thinking. So children being raised in bilingual environments might code switch as soon as they learn to speak. So if they know the word they need in only one of the two languages, they'll pull that word and use it in conversation. If they know it in both languages, they're likely to use whichever one is easier to retrieve. This is similar to code switching in older students beginning to learn a second language and not yet having the vocabulary in both languages, which is how we get what we call Spanglish, or Danglish was what we called German and English. So regardless though, code switching at any level of fluency does require a great deal of cognitive flexibility. Besides cognitive flexibility, hypothesized qualitative benefits of bilingualism include greater executive functioning, skills and focus, delaying the onset of dementia by improving memory, and having a heightened awareness of language. So while I don't necessarily agree that bilingualism helped my decision-making skills, as noted up there in the graphic, although I wish it had, I can speak strongly for the heightened awareness of language. My middle school required that all students take English, Latin, and a modern foreign language, so French, Spanish, or German, for grades 6 and 7. I continued German and Latin simultaneously through 10th grade, when I negotiated my way out of a lunch period so that I could take part of the launch of a Mandarin pilot program at the same time. The only reason I have such a passion for and deep understanding of English grammar rules is because of learning the rules of, it was German, Latin, and English simultaneously. One of our 7th grade, our first Latin project, our first project for my Latin class in 7th grade was to go back and create a language of our own and writing a grammar book for that language, explaining the grammar rules as they correlated to Latin grammar rules, which meant that I had to go back and figure out what those Latin grammar rules were in English so that I could then explain my own language. It was a long process, but it is one of the most kind of mind-blowing, brain-shifting projects that I ever had to do, and really made me fall in love with language. So I'm not a neurologist, so I won't spend too much time on these brain scans. However, I wanted to share, particularly in this top row of scans, how much more of the gray matter in the brains of bilingual individuals are engaged in terms of encoding new or novel instructions as opposed to monolingual brains. You'll see a lot more of the kind of bright pink, and it's very interesting to look at. Okay, so even if exposure does not lead to bilingualism, early exposure to multiculturalism in other languages still has a hugely positive impact on developing brains and nurturing awareness and other forms of thinking. customs, knowledge, wisdom of other cultures, and the vocabulary. So for those of you who haven't been in class with me before, many of the students with whom I work have been diagnosed with dyslexia. And just like my second slide referred to bilingualism as a superpower, I also believe that dyslexia is a superpower if the student has access to appropriate, thorough, and timely intervention. Hence, twice exceptionality. One of my areas of frustration in gifted education research is the lack of studies looking at the intersection of bilingual education and dyslexia. I've worked with several students in particular who have been in Mandarin English dual language immersion schools when they were diagnosed with dyslexia and language processing disorders. And I would love to understand the scholar noted that it uses a different part of the brain for processing. Mandarin uses a different part of the brain for processing than an alphabetic language, and that there have been studies that show dyslexic students have fewer difficulties learning to read and write in character-based tongues. There's just not that much research out there yet. So in remediation of dyslexia, we often utilize nonsense words in an attempt to distinguish between what the student has memorized versus what the student is applying. And practice with nonsense words is very much like practicing another language. Bilingualism seems to be beneficial to both divergent and convergent thinking. However, unless a child's parents are bilingual, how will that child have exposure to a second language? What does bilingual education even look like in the United States? No pretty illustrations here, sorry. I wanted to share with you about a bill passed in Georgia that took effect in the 2016-2017 school year. House Bill 879 established a Georgia Seal of Biliteracy, some of which I've copied verbatim above. Georgia also has been increasing the number of charter dual language immersion schools, though most of them are still centered very close to Atlanta and not around the state. Finally, I won't show this video here, but it's a very quick and engaging TED Ed talk about the benefits of a bilingual brain that I would highly encourage you to view if creativity and bilingualism piques your interest, even in the slightest. It's only 2 or 3 minutes long. And then, thank you for the time you took to listen to this. I've included several prompts if you need a starting point for the discussion to follow, and I look forward to engaging with you more about this topic. Thank you.